So in part 4 of The Witch's Mirror, we're going to talk about witchcraft in antiquity. And I've got a whole series planned for you of witchcraft in history and how that informs witchcraft and paganism today. Here we have a lovely painting by Mickey Muller of Drawing Down the Moon. And it's actually referencing a much older image from a manuscript, which we will see on the next slide. So in this image, which comes from classical, I believe it comes from a piece of classical Greek pottery, in fact, and as you can see, it's been transcribed, as it were, into a book format. Here we have a couple of witches, and they are drawing down the energies of the moon, and we can see that they are naked, and we can see that the moon has a face, and the energy is sort of coming down in a stream from the moon, and one of them is holding a wand and the other one is holding a sword. Isn't that interesting? Because that's some of the tools of modern witchcraft. So some of the key themes of witchcraft in antiquity were reverence for the moon, and that would imply also the phases of the moon being very important. The underworld was very important, and when we think about the cosmology of ancient paganism, you have the upper world, which was typically the world of the gods. So in Greek mythology, we'd have Olympus, the mountain where the gods lived. The middle world, which was the world of mortals, i.e. humans, and then the underworld. Now, the underworld could be two different places. There was Elysium, which was where the happy dead went, and Hades, which is where the less happy shades went to. And Hades was kind of dark and cold, and it was a place, but it was also a place that could be accessed from the mortal world. And in ancient Greek paganism, three worlds were very interpenetrable. So the gods were always manifesting on earth and interfering in human affairs, most notably with the Trojan War, of course, and also in manifesting in various different ways. Like, for instance, I was thinking of another example, which was also from the story of the Trojan War, which was the story of Odysseus, of course. So we have to remember that the whole of the Trojan War started because Paris, the shepherd boy, had to judge between the three goddesses to see who was the most beautiful, and that he had to award the apple of discord, which was given to him by the goddess Eris. And this obviously kicked off the whole Trojan War, because he ends up going to steal Helen from the island where she lived, and then taking her back to Troy, and then the Greeks had to come and get her from Troy, and that's what started the Trojan War. So that was all down to the interference of the gods. Anyways, we find this threefold heaven, world, upper world, middle world, underworld theme in all different paganisms of antiquity. So we have in the Welsh mythology, you have Gwynfyd, which is the upper world, which literally means something like white plain. Gwyn being white. I'm not sure what vid is. I'm sure somebody who is a Welsh scholar will comment to correct me on that. And then you have Abred, which is the middle world, and Annwn, which is the underworld. And in Norse mythology, you have Asgard and Vanaheim, the worlds of the gods, and then Middle Earth, and the various different underworlds. And there were actually 9 worlds in Norse mythology. So But anyway, going back to witchcraft in antiquity, the witches of antiquity were particularly interested in the underworld. And for a related theme, we have the Orphic mysteries, where it was known that Orpheus had descended to the underworld and come back. And so that was very important. He was regarded as a sort of a savior figure. And so people were very interested in, then as now, very interested in the immortality of the soul. So the way that you could ensure that your soul survived death was to undergo various initiatory rituals, such as, for instance, the mysteries of Alephsis, which were not actually witchcraft rituals, but they were a pagan mystery religion. So you descended to the underworld, you traversed the underworld whilst conscious, so that when you died, you would know what to do in order to travel through the underworld and get to the other side, so you could be reborn. And of course, one of the, apart from Persephone and Hades, who are the presiding deities of the underworld, we have very important the goddess Hecate, and Hecate is the goddess of witchcraft. She was also the goddess of not so much the crossroads, but where she was known as Hecate Triformis. So she had three forms, but she was also about the place where the road diverges into three different ways. Of course, these mystery religions that dealt with the dead and the underworld and the soul surviving death were regarded as highly transgressive by the rest of society, because most people's attitude to witchcraft, again, then as now, is scary. That's scary stuff. Ooh, messing with the occult. Ooh. So witchcraft was very transgressive in the ancient pagan world. Later, as we will see in future episodes, paganism and witchcraft came to be conflated. But in the actual antique period, when we have multiple different pagan religions going on, witchcraft is seen as a transgressive activity. So I think it's important to bear that in mind. So let's have a look at Hecate, the goddess of witchcraft. Here we have a modern drawing of her by somebody called Joe Frere, I believe, on the left there, and was my left, might be your right, and with the gold crown, and she's got the three heads. Very mysterious looking image of her. In the middle, we have what looks like an 18th century drawing of an antique statue of her with her three forms. And I think it's worth noting that all three forms are the same age. So she's not a maiden mother crone goddess, in actual fact. And so she's got the torch, which is very important because you need light to illuminate your way through the underworld. And she's got a flame and a key, at least I think that's a key. And she has a knife, very important tool in witchcraft. Not quite sure if that's why she's holding a knife in this picture, but and the third picture, which looks like it was drawn in the 1920s or 30s, judging by the style, has some of her names in Greek. So I know that phosphoros, for example, means light bearer. Not quite sure. Oh, Chthonier, of the earth. And I'm not sure what these other names mean, but you could look them up. So yeah, Hecate, very important goddess in witchcraft. And in fact, there's quite a modern, there's a group of people currently reviving the worship of Hecate in a big way, and you can look them up on the internet too. and there's an excellent book on the subject published by Avalomia Books, possibly more than one. So you can see really how some of these ideas have fed into the image of the witch. And here we have 3 paintings by John William Waterhouse, a pre-Raphaelite painter of late 19th century. So we have a sorceress and she's casting a magic circle. She's got a sickle, sort of proto-cauldron there, and some crows looking on. And I think it's worth noting that there's a cave in the background and she is outside of the city, so she's on the edge of the wilderness. And the theme of being on the edge of things is a constantly repeated theme in the history of witchcraft. There's the idea, which may have actually been formulated as a joke by the New Forest Coven of Witches. There's this idea that witches live in the last house in the village, which is a nice idea, but it might have been a joke. But and in the middle, I think this is a painting of Circe, and pouring a mysterious green liquid into the sea. And on the right, a lady looking into a crystal ball. So another key theme, divination. And one of the things that I think is very important about the image of the witch is that it's an independent woman who is in charge of her own sexuality, and she is, but she lives, because of that, really, she is outcast by respectable society. And this is where we get some of the ideas of wildness and wilderness that are associated with witchcraft. And we will be coming back to those in future episodes. So a bit of further reading. I would highly recommend reading Witches, Druids and King Arthur by Ronald Hutton. As you will notice, all of these books are by Ronald Hutton. And I would actually read The Triumph of the Moon first, because it explains the development of modern witchcraft. And Witches, Druids and King Arthur I would actually read second. Notice we have yet another painting by John William Waterhouse on the cover. And what that does is it explains the genesis of the magical occult Western tradition through from Egyptian witchcraft all the way through to through modern medieval grimoires and into the modern day. Whereas The Triumph of the Moon talks about how the modern witchcraft movement developed from the pagan revival, and all the ideas and strands of thought that went into the modern pagan revival. Very good book. I haven't actually read The Witch yet. Interesting that the publishers, or perhaps Ronald, chose the image of this particular image for the cover, because it is in fact an image of a Waldensian heretic being characterized as a witch flying on a broomstick. So there's a very interesting link there, and we'll be looking at that, the connections between heresy and witchcraft in the episode on medieval witchcraft. So highly recommend these books, and also check out my 2 books published by the Doreen Valiente Foundation, Dark Mirror, The Inner Work of Witchcraft, and The Night Journey, Witchcraft as Transformation. And the Dark Mirror is available now from shop.doreenvaliente.org, and The Night Journey will be published at the beginning of October. So keep an eye on my Instagram feed, which is Yvonne_Abro on Instagram, and also I'm on Twitter as Fogelbearer. That's VOGELBEERE. And I hope you enjoyed this episode of The Witch's Mirror, and I'll see you next week. Thanks for watching. Blessed be.